Close your eyes and imagine a country trying to collect guns it doesn't own, from an army it never authorized, that many of its citizens quietly rely on, while its neighbors watch with fingers hovering over triggers. That's Lebanon today. Not in theory, not in textbooks, today. A small country with a big question hanging over it like a low cloud. Can Lebanon disarm Hezbollah? On paper, this should be simple. States are supposed to have one army, one chain of command, one monopoly on violence. That's the rulebook. Lebanon has the rulebook. Hezbollah has the weapons. And the space between those two facts is where this story lives. Because right now, as Lebanon stumbles through economic collapse, political paralysis, and regional war spilling across its borders, the idea of disarming Hezbollah is back in the conversation. Again, not as a slogan, not as a fantasy, as a demand from foreign governments, from frustrated citizens, from a collapsing state that is running out of room to pretend this contradiction can last forever. So let's talk about it, not with slogans, not with wishful thinking, but with uncomfortable math, quiet incentives, and the mechanics no one likes to say out loud. Because the real question isn't whether Hezbollah can be disarmed, it's what would break first if someone seriously tried. Start with the moment we're in. Lebanon is effectively bankrupt. Its currency lost most of its value. Banks locked people out of their own savings, electricity is intermittent, the state barely functions. At the same time, Israel and Hezbollah are trading fire along the southern border. Not a full war, not peace, something in between, the most dangerous category. Every rocket, every strike, every funeral pushes the same question back to the surface. Who decides war and peace in Lebanon? Because it's not the Lebanese government. It never really has been, and everyone knows it. That's why disarmament keeps coming up now. When systems weaken, old compromises stop holding. For years, Lebanon survived by not resolving this issue, by postponing it, by calling it complex, and moving on. Today, postponement is getting expensive. Foreign aid comes with conditions, regional tensions raise the stakes, and internally, more Lebanese are asking a question that once felt taboo. How can we be a country if one group keeps an independent army? That's the setup. Now we need to understand how this system actually works, not how it's described in speeches, how it works on the ground. Hezbollah did not appear out of nowhere. It emerged in the early 1980s during Israel's occupation of southern Lebanon in the middle of a civil war, where the Lebanese state had already collapsed. At the time, disarmament wasn't the issue, survival was. Hezbollah positioned itself as resistance, and crucially, it delivered results its supporters could see, pushing Israel out in 2000. That victory matters more than any ideology. It became the foundation of Hezbollah's legitimacy. From that point on, Hezbollah's weapons weren't just weapons, they were proof. Proof that the group could do what the state could not. And that changes everything. Because after the Civil War, Lebanon did something unusual. It disarmed almost everyone, except Hezbollah. The justification was simple and politically convenient. Hezbollah wasn't a militia, it was a resistance force, temporary, specific, directed outward. That exception became permanent. Then came 2006, a war with Israel that devastated Lebanon, but also elevated Hezbollah's image among supporters as the only force capable of standing up to a far stronger enemy. From there, the arsenal grew, quietly, methodically. Tens of thousands of rockets, precision guidance, drones, fortifications. This is no longer a militia, it's a parallel military. And here's the uncomfortable part. Everyone has known this for years, including the Lebanese state, including its allies, including its critics. So why hasn't anything changed? Because disarmament isn't a policy question, it's a power question. Let's simplify the mechanics. To disarm Hezbollah, someone has to do the disarming. Who is that? The Lebanese army? It's underfunded, under-equipped, and carefully balanced to reflect Lebanon's sectarian makeup. Its cohesion depends on staying neutral. Ordering it to confront Hezbollah wouldn't unify it, it would fracture it. Civil war doesn't start with gunfire, it starts with units refusing orders. What about politics? The parliament could pass a resolution, the cabinet could issue a statement, but Hezbollah isn't armed because of a legal loophole. It's armed because it can be, and because it has support. Not from everyone, but from enough. Here's the math nobody likes to show on screen. Hezbollah represents a large portion of Lebanon's Shia population, the country's largest sect. It provides social services, salaries, healthcare, schools. In areas where the state is absent, Hezbollah is present. So when people say disarm Hezbollah, what many supporters hear is strip your community of its leverage and protection. That fear isn't abstract. They watched what happened to Palestinians in Lebanon, to Sunnis in Iraq, to minorities across the region when power shifted. Hezbollah's weapons are framed internally as insurance, not aggression. Insurance policies are hard to cancel when you don't trust the system. Now, zoom out. Externally, Hezbollah is not just Lebanese. It is part of a regional network backed by Iran. That backing isn't symbolic. It's financial, logistical, strategic, which means disarmament isn't just a domestic negotiation, it's a geopolitical demand. Asking Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah is indirectly asking Iran to give up a deterrent on Israel's border. That's not a small ask, and Iran has very little incentive to agree, especially now, especially when regional tensions are high and leverage matters. So when foreign diplomats say Lebanon must assert sovereignty, what they're really saying is Lebanon must do something we know it probably can't do alone. That's the quiet irony. Everyone demands sovereignty from a state that barely has power. Let's talk about pressure. Could economic collapse force Hezbollah to give up arms? Some argue yes. They say Hezbollah needs a functioning state. It needs ports, banks, stability. But look closer. Hezbollah has survived sanctions, wars, and isolation. It operates partially outside Lebanon's formal economy. In some ways, state collapse increases its relative power. When institutions fail, organized actors fill the gap. Disarmament requires leverage, and Lebanon has very little leverage over Hezbollah. What about popular pressure? Protests have erupted across sectarian lines. Anger is real, but here's the limit. People protest corruption, mismanagement, elites. They rarely march demanding Hezbollah disarm. Not because everyone supports it, but because everyone understands the cost of that demand. Lebanon's civil war memory is not abstract history. It lives in families, neighborhoods, mass graves. Disarmament is associated, emotionally, with chaos. Now, contrast the hype with reality. Every few months, a headline appears. Calls grow to disarm Hezbollah. It sounds decisive. It sounds overdue. It sounds simple. But behind that headline is usually nothing more than statements. No roadmap, no enforcement, no plan for what happens the next day. Because the day after disarmament is harder than the announcement. Who controls the South? Who deters Israel? Who absorbs the backlash from Hezbollah's base? Who prevents splinter groups from emerging? Weapons don't disappear. They move, or they fragment, or they turn inward. This is where the stakes escalate. If Lebanon seriously attempted to disarm Hezbollah without consensus, it would likely trigger internal conflict. If it doesn't attempt anything, it risks external war and permanent paralysis. That's the trap. Do something and risk collapse. Do nothing and guarantee stagnation. So, is there a third option? Historically, Lebanon's answer has been ambiguity. neither full integration nor confrontation. Hezbollah participates in politics but keeps its arms. The state pretends this is temporary. Everyone pretends not to notice the contradiction. Today, that ambiguity is under strain. Border clashes remind the country that decisions are being made without it. Economic collapse exposes how little control the state actually has. Foreign actors are less patient, and internally, a younger generation is less willing to accept inherited compromises. Still, realism matters. Disarmament, if it ever happens, would not look like a raid or a decree. It would look like a regional deal, a reduction of tensions between Iran and Israel, security guarantees, gradual integration, years, not months. And even then, nothing is guaranteed, because power once acquired is rarely surrendered voluntarily, especially in a region where weakness invites disaster. So, can Lebanon disarm Hezbollah? In theory, yes. In today's reality, not unilaterally, not cleanly, not without consequences that may be worse than the problem itself. The deeper truth is this: Lebanon's problem is not that Hezbollah has weapons, it's that the state never rebuilt enough power to make those weapons unnecessary. Disarmament is a symptom-level demand. State building is the disease-level solution. And state building is slow, boring, and brutally difficult. It requires trust, and trust is Lebanon's rarest resource. So we end where we began, a country trying to collect guns it doesn't own, from an army it never authorized, while standing at the edge of someone else's war. The question isn't whether Hezbollah can be disarmed, it's whether Lebanon can survive long enough to make that question obsolete.